Good morning and welcome to News9 Mediaverse, and I am Kartikeya Sharma and you are watching special edition on Independence Day. A very happy 77th Independence Day to all our viewers from News9. Today, in his address from the ramparts of the Red Fort, Prime Minister Narendra Modi battled for peace in Manipur and said that the centre and state are working together for peace in the state. Prime Minister added that there is peace and they would continue to strive to get every community back. Prime Minister also spoke about the issue of corruption. He spoke about pushing out reforms. He spoke about welfare measures. He spoke about creation of new middle class majority in this country. He spoke about national security. He spoke about parivarwaad against parivarwaad. He spoke about the 10 years that he has given. He spoke about progress. He spoke about bhrashtachar. He spoke about tushtikaran. But Prime Minister also said that he will be back next year. So before I introduce my guests, let's listen into two important bites of the Prime Minister, and then we will analyze and debate how was his 10th speech from the rampart of the Red Fort.
हमारे देश की सारी समस्याओं की जड़ में भ्रष्टाचार में दिमक की तरह देश की सारी व्यवस्थाओं को, देश के सामर्थ्य को पूरी तरह नोच लिया। भ्रष्टाचार से मुक्ति, भ्रष्टाचार के खिलाफ जंग हर इकाई में, हर क्षेत्र में। और मैं देशवासियों, मेरे प्रिय परिवारजनों, ये मोदी के जीवन का कमिटमेंट है। ये मेरे अपने व्यक्तित्व का एक कमिटमेंट है कि मैं भ्रष्टाचार के खिलाफ लड़ाई लड़ता रहूंगा। दूसरा, हमारे देश को नोच लिया है परिवारवाद। इस परिवारवाद ने देश को जिस प्रकार से जकड़ के रखा है, उसने देश के लोगों का हक छीना है। और तीसरी बुराई तुष्टीकरण की है। ये तुष्टीकरण में भी देश के मूलभूत चिंतन को, देश के सर्वसमावेशक हमारे राष्ट्रीय चरित्र को दाग लगा दिए, तहस-नहस कर दिया है लोग। और इसलिए मेरे प्यारे देशवासियों, इसलिए मेरे प्यारे परिवारजनों, हमें इन तीन बुराइयों के खिलाफ पूरे सामर्थ्य के साथ लड़ना है। भ्रष्टाचार, परिवारवाद, तुष्टीकरण, ये चुनौतियां हमारे ऐसी चीजें पनपी है जो हमारे देश के लोगों का जो आकांक्षा है उसका दमन करती है। हमारे देश के कुछ लोगों के पास जो छोटा मोटा सामर्थ्य है उसका शोषण करती है। ये ऐसी चीजें हैं जो हमारे लोगों की आशा आकांक्षाओं को सवाल या निशान में गाड़ देती है। हमारे गरीब हो, हमारे दलित हो, हमारे पिछड़े हो, हमारे पसमानदा हो, हमारे आदिवासी भाई बहन हो, हमारी माताएं बहनें हो, हमने सबने उनके हकों के लिए इन तीन बुराइयों से मुक्ति पानी है। हमें भ्रष्टाचार के खिलाफ एक नफरत का माहौल बनाना। जैसे गंदगी हमें नफरत पैदा करती है ना मन में, गंदगी पसंद नहीं है, ये सार्वजनिक जीवन की इससे बड़ी कोई गंदगी नहीं है। और इसलिए हमारे स्वच्छता अभियान को एक नया मोड़ ये भी देना है कि हमें भ्रष्टाचार से मुक्ति पानी है। सरकार टेक्नोलॉजी से भ्रष्टाचार की मुक्ति के लिए बहुत प्रयास कर रही है। आपको जानकर के हैरानी होगी, इस देश में पिछले 9 साल में एक काम मैंने ऐसे किया, आंकड़ा सुने हुए तो लोगों का मोदी ऐसा करता है जैसे 10 करोड़ लोग करीब जो गलत फायदा उठाते हैं वो मैंने रोक दिया। तो आप में तो कोई कहेगा आपने लोगों से अन्याय कर दिया। जी नहीं, ये 10 करोड़ कौन लोग थे? ये 10 करोड़ वो लोग थे जिनका जन्म ही नहीं हुआ था और उनके नाम पर उनके विडो हो जाते थे, वो वृद्ध हो जाते थे, वो दिव्यांग हो जाते थे, फायदे लिए जाते थे। 10 करोड़ ऐसे बेनामी जो चीजें चलती थी उसको रोकने का पवित्र काम, भ्रष्टाचारियों की संपत्ति जो हमने जब्त की है ना, वो पहले की तुलना में 20 गुना ज्यादा की। मेरे प्यारे परिवारजनों, ये आपकी कमाई का पैसा लोग लेकर के भागे थे। 20 गुना ज्यादा संपत्ति को जब्त करने का, और इसलिए लोगों की मेरे प्रति नाराजगी होना बहुत स्वाभाविक है। लेकिन मुझे भ्रष्टाचार के खिलाफ की लड़ाई को आगे बढ़ाना है। 2014 में मेरे देशवासियों ने 30 साल के अनुभव के बाद तय किया कि देश को आगे ले जाना है तो स्थिर सरकार चाहिए, मजबूत सरकार चाहिए, पूर्ण बहुमत वाली सरकार चाहिए। और देशवासियों ने एक मजबूत और स्थिर सरकार बनाई। और 3 दशकों के जो अनिश्चितता का कालखंड था, जो अस्थिरता का कालखंड था, जो राजनीतिक मजबूरियों से देश जकड़ा हुआ था, उससे मुक्ति मिली है। मेरे प्यारे परिवारजनों, देश के पास आज एक ऐसी सरकार है, वो सर्वजन हिताय सर्वजन सुखाय, देश के संतुलित विकास के लिए समय का पल पल और जनता की पाई पाई, जनता की भलाई के लिए लगा रही है। और मेरी सरकार, मेरे देशवासियों का मन एक बात से जुड़ा हुआ है। हमारे हर निर्णय, हमारे हर दिशा, उसका एक ही मानदंड है, नेशन फर्स्ट, राष्ट्र प्रथम। और राष्ट्र प्रथम यही दूरगामी परिणाम, सकारात्मक परिणाम पैदा करने वाला है। देश में बड़े स्तर पर काम हो रहा है। और लेकिन मैं कहना चाहूंगा, 2014 में आपने एक मजबूत सरकार बनाई, और मैं कहता हूं 2014 में और 2019 में आपने एक सरकार फॉर्म की, तो मोदी में रिफॉर्म करने की हिम्मत आई। आपने ऐसी सरकार फॉर्म की कि मोदी को रिफॉर्म की हिम्मत आई। और जब मोदी ने एक के बाद एक रिफॉर्म किए, तो मेरे ब्यूरोक्रेसी के लोग, मेरे लाखों हाथ पैर जो हिंदुस्तान के कोने कोने में सरकार के हिस्से के रूप में काम कर रहे हैं, उन्होंने, ब्यूरोक्रेसी ने ट्रांसफॉर्म करने के लिए, परफॉर्म करने की जिम्मेवारी बखूबी निभाई। और उन्होंने परफॉर्म करके दिखाया, और जनता जनार्दन जुड़ गई, तो वो ट्रांसफॉर्म होता भी नजर आ रहा है। और इसलिए रिफॉर्म, परफॉर्म, ट्रांसफॉर्म, ये कालखंड अब भारत के भविष्य को गढ़ रहा है।
And today I am joined by Mr. Shashi, Shekhar, Vempati, former CEO, Prasar, Bharti. I am also joined by Rakesh, Khar, editor, News9 Mediaverse, and input editor of News9 Live, Brijesh Pandey. So, Mr. Vempati, first to you. Prime Minister spoke on multiple issues. He spoke on, he coined a new word, parivarjan against parivarwaad. He spoke on national security. He spoke on the politics of Tushtikaran. He spoke on the creation of a new middle class. He spoke on the issue of welfare schemes. But to you, this was, what's the biggest takeaway, as it was his 10th address from the ramparts of the Red Fort, exactly months away from the general elections?
Thank you, Kartikeya. I think, first of all, a very happy Independence Day to all of you and to your viewers. I think, as you rightly pointed out, this was the 10th address of the Prime Minister from Red Fort, and it comes at a very significant moment in modern India's, independent India's journey. It is the end of what was called the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, which was to mark 75 years of independence. It is the beginning of the period that he has been repeatedly calling as the Amrit Kal, the next 25 years or the next 2 decades before India, independent India becomes 100 in 2047. It is also a few weeks away from the all-important G20 summit, where India holds the presidency, and you will have a whole host of global leaders visiting Delhi at a time when India is playing a crucial role in several areas of geopolitics. So to me, this speech was a speech that was meant to carry this significant moment, bring its significance to every citizen, and to lay out a roadmap for what is going to happen over the next 5 years, next 10 years, 20 years. And I think he did exactly that. The key takeaway for me was the energy with which he delivered the speech. I think it was very palpable that there was a lot of high energy motivation that went into the speech, and he was very forthright in some of the issues that otherwise prime ministers would have spoken subtly, or they would have been a little more ambivalent. I think he was very clear on what he was speaking. He was very clear on what he was hinting at, and he was very clear with the key message that you formed this government, you allowed me to reform, I performed, now it is the time to transform. And that is the key takeaway.
Mr. Vempati, I wouldn't use the word Nehruvian, but there is a similarity because Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, from the ramparts to the Red Fort, and I was thinking about it today morning, when he spoke on various issues, it was like a distinct break from the colonial past. Prime Minister Modi, and in between when the other prime ministers came, they focused on a lot of continuity, but Prime Minister Modi, again, he formulated his politics from a distinct break from the past. His politics was premised on anti-corruption. His politics was premised on governance, custodian of national security. Nehru was premised on, to break the shackles of colonial past. So this breaking away of the past, don't you think is the most defining part of the Prime Minister Modi? When he speaks, it's more about like breaking away from the past, which is very distinct from other prime ministers.
Absolutely. I think this breaking away from the past was apparent in every one of his Independence Day speeches. In fact, when I was at Prasar Bharti, one of the things that we had done was to digitize all of the Independence Day speeches of all of the prime ministers. And looking at some of the speeches of the past, you would see that most of the time the Independence Day speech would end up being a sort of a long rambling speech on the various schemes and talking about all the various government initiatives. What this Prime Minister has done is a very clear break in terms of having a conversation with this country on difficult issues. For example, when he a few years back, he spoke about sanitation, toilets. He spoke about the safety of the girl child, asking families to ask the sons difficult questions on where did you go, what did you do, right? So difficult conversations have been a part of the Independence Day speech. And if you look at the format of the Independence Day speech from Red Fort, right, it was not an easy speech to deliver because you have, first of all, Delhi in August, very hot and humid. You have, you don't have the same kind of eye contact with the audience because you're delivering it from a distance. You don't necessarily get the same kind of crowd response as you would get in a closed room or in a political rally, right? Because of the format of the speech. So to be able to use this platform and deliver a rousing speech which really engages with every citizen in every part of India, and to have these difficult conversations on subjects that otherwise were not put out in the public domain, I think is very unique about this Prime Minister. So definitely in that sense, it is a break from the past.
I think detailing also, लोग भूल जाते हैं 10 साल हो गए इस बात को, बुलेट प्रूफ कॉरिडोर की विदाई भी हुई थी और भारतीय प्रतीक साफों की अगुवाई भी हो गई थी 2014 में.
बिल्कुल, I think that is a significant change, that you get a clear view perspective of the Prime Minister. ये जो बुलेट प्रूफ का जो पोर्टल था वो पूरा हट गया. And also you will see that the speeches are much longer. I was looking at some stats earlier today on the average length of the Independence Day speech. I think Prime Minister Modi's speeches are among the longest, perhaps almost as long as speeches that Mrs. Gandhi would deliver, while all of the other prime ministers delivered fairly shorter speeches. So in that sense, there's a significant change there as well. And also the manner in which this entire Independence Day event, the build up to it with, the various campaigns, for example, liberalizing the flag code and popularizing Har Ghar Tiranga. I think it's a significant break from the past. Now, you made everyone a participant in this pageantry. It is not just, the Prime Minister delivering remarks from a distance, but now every citizen has become, part of this movement around this build-up towards independence.
No, you are perfectly, you're right, I agree. If you look at the photographs, of our independence, early days 50s, वो जन महोत्सव होता था. Gradually 60s and 70s it turned into a sarkari function. I think what he imparted was a public participation. But I think that defines Prime Minister Modi. Swachh Bharat campaign, you don't need to sacrifice your entire life to be part of it. It's like very Gandhian in one way. You can do your little bit. It's like I was reading one of the articles, and Gandhi argued you don't need to be a satyagrahi to, you don't need to go to jail to be a satyagrahi. You just need to do one little thing. So I think to do one little thing, Har Ghar Tiranga, yeah, Swachh Bharat, I think that defines Prime Minister, public participation in cherishing moments of importance or creating impetus for government scheme. I think that characterizes him, and all that comes together every year on 15th of August, sir.
Absolutely. In fact, if you look at his slogan now, it's not just Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, it is also Sabka Prayas, which is, highlighting or underscoring this whole creed of involving the people, making them participants in the process. And it goes back to his early days as a community organizer in his early days at Disang, where if you look at some of his work, in the 80s and 90s, almost every one of them has this common theme where he finds innovative ways of involving people, be it Vaishnav Jan, coming up with different ways of rendering Vaishnav Jan, be it, take the example of the Statue of Unity, right, where you had, every village in India contributing iron, which went into the construction of the Statue of Unity in Kevadia. So this is a very common repeating, theme of how to make everyone a participant, an equal stakeholder in these transformative, initiatives.
I'll in this part of the conversation, I'll go to Rakesh ji and Brijesh, because what you are talking about, making everyone part of it, is something very, very unique. Only one politician has been able to do that abroad, is Barack Obama, when he took donations for $1 to $4, and his campaign suddenly became different, and everyone became part of his campaign. You didn't need to be a big donor to be part of the president. Very, very expensive American presidential campaign. Rakesh ji, there's one part here which says democracy, demography and diversity, and Prime Minister says तीनों है हमारे पास.
Absolutely. Happy Independence Day to you, Kartikeya and Brijesh, my two esteemed colleagues. I think the speech ticks all the right boxes. I have a little quarrel with the length. Shashi talked about the virtue of length, but it's very difficult in today's age and time to sustain that 90+ minute conversation. But only if someone can do it, it's Mr. Modi. He believes that he has the capability to defeat the law of diminishing marginal economic utility. That's why very confidently he said that I'm going to come back next year and draw the big picture. You talked about, Kartikeya, the timing. Mr. Modi has this great capability to fix him at the center of past and future. He talked about 1,000 years aggression, and then he talks about 1,000 years of Bharat Kal, Amrit Kal, and he has positioned himself right at the center of it. He has fast-tracked 2047 to 2024. I mean, that's how he addressed the election agenda. And in terms of addressing his core constituencies, whether it's the citizens of this country, where he for the first time brought about the word family versus brothers and sisters, which again is a significant departure. And I think he took pains to address and iterate to an effect that he talked about this parivarwaad rather than brothers and sisters, what has been the bane of his earlier speeches. So in that context, he's trying to be as inclusive as possible. He's brought himself at the center of the conversation. He has not lost an opportunity to address the political climate, which is just on the eve of the general elections. Though ideally, I would have felt that the last piece about appeasement, corruption and dynasty was avoidable on the Independence Day speech. But then we are in election already, and we have 3 state elections.
I think that defines our Prime Minister. I think he's sensitive to the fact this time around, if you would have read the newspaper reports, minimalism is the theme. The decorations are not very exuberant in nature. So he is aware that certain things have happened in certain parts of this country. So that has also reflected.
Yeah,
I'll play out that bite.
Yeah, Kartikeya, the beauty of his conversation and pitch is that he is able to marry the macro and the micro so well. So when he talked about corruption, he linked it to 2047 and a Viksit Bharat at that stage. So he has this capability of making a point and then stretching it to a level where it becomes big picture. And he connected India's growth of 2047 to the world growth, where he repeatedly, I think he spent a fair part of his speech today on defining and outlining the very, very strong role India is going to play in the global arena. He talked of geopolitics. I think for the first time in many independence speeches that I have heard or you would have heard, geopolitics has made an entry, where he said that India is going to really play a big role post-COVID. And he said, addressing the 140 crore citizens, आपके हाथ में दुनिया का भविष्य, अब आप एक बड़ा रोल प्ले करेंगे कि दुनिया कैसे शेप होगी. So that's giving them a larger than life role, which is deserving in this case. I think broadly he addressed all the key components. He talked about, but
I think, of late, people say that if you want to understand the Prime Minister, then you need to listen to him and the words he repeats most often. So if you recall, last year it was dynasty. Prime Minister in last 6 months has started to repeat the word third place in the economic order, multi-trillion economy. So that is something significant. He said this in Parliament. He said this from the rampart of the Red Fort, and he is repeating that. Third place for India.
Absolutely, he's linked it to himself again. I'm saying he has the capability to put himself in the center. He says Modi guarantee hai and third place in the world. So, and 2024.
Correct.
Look at the way he makes messaging so simple and so confident, so concrete, so convincing. There may be critics of him calling that, it's a pitch for yourself, but and then he's linking it all to the core principle of national character and Vishwas. Trust. Imagine how many times he uses the trust. And again, he has linked 3 slogans that you mentioned, reform, perform and transform. Now, if you analyze it from his speech, he did a very subtle messaging. 2014 is, reform, 2019 is perform, 2024 is transform. So, he's again linked these 3 key pillars of his governance to the election that is to be, and then kept the entire audience. Shashi is right, addressing a 90+ speech from the ramparts where there is no eye contact and still being able to pull it off is a Modi's capability in terms of his eloquence.
But Brijesh, he also did not forget the welfare part or the political economy of welfareism. He made it a point to mention everything in detail. I mean to say, even to say 13.5 crore people out of the poverty, there was detailing when it came to welfare issues.
Well, Kartikeya, when a Prime Minister delivers a speech, there is no way you cannot find the detailings, because, there is a lot of effort, and if the Prime Minister is going to speak on a particular issue, all the stats are given. I'm not surprised with the detailing, because I've covered BJP for a very long time, and we have seen this how Prime Minister is very meticulous about 2 things: A, the messaging which he gives, and B, about the factual accuracy of the schemes or the things which he speak about. As Rakesh very astutely pointed out, the 3 pillars. I would say that the most important takeaway would be the kind of confidence he exuded by saying that in 2024 next year I'll again come and I'll deliver it, because a majority of what he said is something which he has said so many times. It is not like the first time which he has said. So I'm not surprised with it. And if you have been from 2013 onwards, if you've covered Prime Minister Narendra Modi in various elections, and from 26 January to 15th August, his speeches in Parliament and all, these are leitmotif of his speech. The trust which he talks about, so on and on and on, it drills into people's head that that there is one person who not only says, but he means what he says. So that kind of thing is there. But I think if you go by the political happenings which has happened in the last 2 months, which is the formation of a political bloc called India, and the way the BJP reacted to it, I think the most important, my takeaway is his addressing of the Manipur crisis, because he has been criticized a lot about that, that he didn't address it in the right spirit, and also the fact, the confidence which he has exuded that next year I'll be the one who will be addressing the nation from the ramparts. I think my key takeaway is
Mr. Vempati, before I come to you, there is one thing which I would like to tell our viewers. If you look at his speech, there is a very clear pattern. For example, there are 3 parts devoted to women and girl child. And what are these? महिला नेतृत्व, बेटियों पर जुल्म ना हो, ये हमारा सामाजिक और पारिवारिक दायित्व है. देश को आगे ले जाएंगी वो महिला नेतृत्व वाला विकास है. So women emancipation and progress has been linked with developmental politics. Social justice has been linked with girl child. खेलों में छोटे गांवों से निकले बेटे बेटियां कमाल दिखा रहे हैं. People would have used the word हमारे लड़के, नौजवान, नौजवान. No one would have even thought, हाँ नौजवान, देश का नौजवान आगे आ रहा है. But it shows a thought which Prime Minister's entire team and Prime Minister himself put in. So instead of using a word like नौजवान, he says खेलों में की दुनिया देखिए, झुग्गियों से निकले, छोटे गांवों से निकले बेटे बेटियां कमाल दिखा रही हैं. 100 स्कूल ऐसे हैं जहां के बच्चे सैटेलाइट बना रहे हैं. So it's like not only gender neutrality, but he has an eye for detail that women has to be put in at the center of thing, the girl child. I really appreciate that as a journalist. Vempati ji said that he liked this. Brijesh said, this was his biggest takeaway. You spoke on economy. This touched me a lot. Instead of using the word Naujawan, Prime Minister used the word Bete Betiyan.
There's a lot of consistency there, Kartikeya.
Yeah,
2014
exactly.
speech, he talked about reforming the family, where you have to address the family values by respecting the girl child.
And he said, remember, I'm sorry, I'm just like, remember that dialogue, sir, when he said that, आप अपना बेटा आ रहा हो तो उससे पूछिए तुम कहाँ से आ रहे हो
और कितने बजे
आ रहे हो अपनी बेटियों से.
Absolutely. So I think there is a
very, very consistent. Vempati ji, I'll just come to you. I'll play out that Manipur bite because Prime Minister Modi has also done one thing which is, in a way, you must be thinking, मैं बार-बार क्यों कर रहा हूँ? Because I think he has taken the best from the previous prime ministers and put it on the table. He has become custodian of national security. Very few prime ministers have been able to do that. He represents national security, and every prime minister has done his bit in national security. But prime minister has blended it with his Vishwas ki Rajniti, which is so strong, and I think makes the foundation of his politics. कि लोगों को लगता है भाई उनको काम करने दीजिए. Even in Gujarat campaign, when he was the chief minister, I realized covering him, people would tell him, आप यहाँ क्यों करने आए canvas? आप जाके काम करिए, आप state चलाएं, and that is so unique to Prime Minister. Let's play out his bite of Manipur.
मेरे प्यारे परिवारजनों, पिछले नॉर्थ ईस्ट में, विशेषकर मणिपुर में और हिंदुस्तान के भी अन्य कुछ भागों में, लेकिन विशेषकर मणिपुर में जो हिंसा का दौर चला, कई लोगों को अपना जीवन खोना पड़ा, मां बेटियों के सम्मान के साथ खिलवाड़ हुआ, लेकिन कुछ दिनों से लगातार शांति की खबरें आ रही हैं. देश मणिपुर के लोगों के साथ है. देश मणिपुर के लोगों को पिछले कुछ दिनों से जो शांति बनाए रखी है, उस शांति के पर्व को आगे बढ़ाएं और शांति से इस हल का रास्ता निकलेगा और राज्य और केंद्र सरकार मिलकर के उन समस्याओं के समाधान के लिए भरपूर प्रयास रही है, करती रहेगी.
Vempati ji, if we keep aside this bite on Manipur, there is also another thing which comes to fore, that Prime Minister in public persona is like custodian of national security. The last Prime Minister who could successfully did it was Indira Gandhi. After that, no Prime Minister could ever claim that he is the custodian. When I mean custodian, काम करने दीजिए उनको, he'll take care of it. Your comments.
Yeah, let me first react to what you were discussing just a couple of minutes back on, the detailing and how he has been emphasizing the girl child. And if you look at, his speeches over the years, this is a very consistent theme, because if you look at his politics has been a very different kind of politics. It's a break from the past. It is not rooted in, traditional identities. And to be able to do that, to be able to deliver that message, he has consistently looked to carve out a very niche constituency for himself, which is the new middle class, the women, the girl child. So you see this consistent emphasis where he's able to appeal to them directly, so that they are able to be that swing vote, which delivers him and empowers him to pursue this reform-oriented developmental agenda. So this is a very consistent theme across the years. Coming back to your question on national
No,
security.
you are right. I don't disagree with you, sir. Appointment of Nirmala as a defense minister was path breaking. Indira ji के time में था जब उन्होंने वो portfolio रखा था, if my memory serves me right, for some time. Again, it went back to a person, man, and लोगों को बड़ा लगता है कि ठीक है.
Representation of women in the cabinet in both the terms.
No, लोगों को लगता है कि अब बड़ा सामान्य बात है. You have a finance minister as a woman for so many years. Just recall 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000. Finance ministry, defense ministry, home ministry. You have a woman there.
Absolutely. Your speaker, president, you had his successor in Gujarat, a woman chief minister. So it's a very big part of his developmental approach is, and in fact he shared this some time back in a conversation that in his first campaign in Ahmedabad, in the municipal corporation, he was able to turn the entire landscape in favor by engaging with housewives, going and meeting them in the afternoons and mobilizing them for the campaign. So this is something that is very deeply ingrained in his approach to democratic politics. Now coming back to national security, I think I would disagree with you on one point there, that I would say even Prime Minister Vajpayee, because if you look at his term, right, you had Pokhran, you had Kargil, you had some very significant moments of national security, the sanctions on India and so on. So apart from Prime Minister Modi and Mrs. Gandhi, I would say even Mr. Vajpayee was also a Prime Minister who came across as the custodian of national security. What is different with this Prime Minister, very clearly, and I think Rakesh alluded to it some time back, was he has spoken about India's place in the global order, in the overall geopolitics that is emerging. And for the first time, because if I recall, almost every Independence Day speech of the past would be where you would talk about the neighbors, you would talk about hostility, you would talk about hostile environment, and so on and so forth. This is one speech where the neighborhood was completely set aside, because India has its sights much further ahead by looking at India's place in the emerging global order, the geopolitical scenario that is rapidly changing. And he set the goals very clearly, that the third biggest economy in the world and a developed India by 2047. So in that sense, from a national security standpoint, it is about India's strategic interests from an entire global context, and not just the subcontinent and the neighborhood context, which used to be the dominant theme for most of the Independence Day speech.
But I think, isn't it obvious, because we have done well economically, Pakistan's economy is in shambles. Look at what has happened in Sri Lanka. You have a junta in Myanmar, except perhaps Bangladesh. India is leagues ahead. It's but obvious that we will not be limited by our neighborhood politics. India has come of age, Vempati ji.
Even Bangladesh is in bad shape, Kartikeya, now. I mean, relativity is, I think the entire South Asia is in fiscal virus. We have escaped that, and we have global aspirations. In that sense,
absolutely. So it's obvious that why should he talk about neighborhood? He'll talk about global South. We are hosting G20. We'll talk about Ukraine. We'll talk about chips, semiconductors, our place there. We'll talk about emerging technologies in context of Green India. We have set such ambitious targets for hydrogen, Green India. We are one country which has 40% of production of renewable energy. Mr. Vempati, and then I'll come to you, Rakesh ji.
Yeah, very subtly he hinted at China as well, without naming China, right? Because he talked about the post-COVID situation and the recovery, and it's very clear that it is only India that has recovered so well, and the Indian economy that is growing. And look at what has happened to China with the zero COVID and all of the economic bad news that is coming across. So clearly, India's place in the world, India is the voice of the global South, and the aspirations of being a global economic heavyweight and a fully developed nation by 2047. I think that is the direction that he has set, and that is the basis on which he is confidently seeking this mandate. And earlier Rakesh had mentioned that he probably shouldn't have alluded to dynastic politics and so on. No, I don't think so. I think it was very apt for the reason that in his mind this is a crucial moment for Indian democracy, and India cannot afford to make the mistake of the wrong choice come general elections next year. And I think that is the reason why so much of the speech was dedicated to make sure that what is the narrative with which he wants the voters to look at the choice of 2024. And it's so important because it is not just about his party, it's not just about his premiership, but it is about India's future, India's growth story, India's development over the next 2 decades.
I was reserving the best for the last, like deserts. You're absolutely right. When he spoke about पूर्ण बहुमत की सरकार, लेकिन वो speech का मीठा है. That's the desert. But yeah, you are right. He spoke about the supply chain. Let's talk about let's play out the bite of Prime Minister on COVID, because in this bite वो उन्होंने कहा है जब दुनिया की सप्लाई चेन तहस नहस हो गई तब हमने कहा कि विश्व का विकास देखना है तो मानव केंद्रित होना चाहिए. You're right, Mr. Vempati. Let's play out that bite of the Prime Minister.
मैं साफ साफ देख रहा हूं कि कोरोना के बाद एक नया विश्व ऑर्डर, एक नया ग्लोबल ऑर्डर, एक नया जियोपॉलिटिकल इक्वेशन ये बहुत तेजी से आगे बढ़ रहा है. जियोपॉलिटिकल इक्वेशन की सारे व्याख्याएं बदल रही है, परिभाषाएं बदल रही है. और मेरे प्यारे परिवारजनों, आप गौरव करेंगे. बदलते हुए विश्व को शेप देने में आज मेरे 140 करोड़ देशवासियों आपका सामर्थ्य नजर आ रहा है. आप निर्णायक मोड़ पर खड़े हैं. और कोरोना काल में भारत ने जिस प्रकार से देश को आगे बढ़ाया, दुनिया ने हमारे सामर्थ्य को देखा है. जब दुनिया के सप्लाई चेन तहस नहस हो गई थी, बड़ी बड़ी अर्थव्यवस्था पर दबाव था, उस समय भी हमने कहा था हमें विश्व का विकास देखना है तो मानव केंद्रीय होना चाहिए, मानवीय संवेदनाओं से भरा हुआ होना चाहिए, और तब जाकर के समस्याओं का सही समाधान निकालेंगे. और कोविड ने हमें सिखाया है या हमें मजबूर किया है, लेकिन मानवीय संवेदनाओं को छोड़ करके हम विश्व का कल्याण नहीं कर सकते. आज भारत ग्लोबल साउथ की आवाज बन रहा है.
Now I'll come to the political part of his speech, something which people would talk about. He spoke about mandate. India is beautiful because it is one of the few countries who have undergone colonization but have been able to successfully hold elections, barring those 2 black years of 75 and 77, those 2 years. We have been able to hold our elections continuously. And Prime Minister spoke about mandate.
Oh, interesting.
The Prime Minister spoke about mandate. Vempati, this is the word which Rakesh ji has given for our election programming, the mandate.
Yeah.
So it's mandate India, it's mandate Chhattisgarh, it's mandate Madhya Pradesh. So the mandate. And Pradhan Mantri ji ne kaha, पूर्ण बहुमत की सरकार.
Absolutely. I think, Kartikeya, a very definite and solid mandate, as Shashi rightly pointed out, it's irrespective of which party it belongs to. But India needs a definite mandate. We have had an era of coalition. It ran through even with Vajpayee as the Prime Minister, and it did remarkably well. But that doesn't take away the merit of a very strong government at the center and in the states. I am a firm believer, Kartikeya, of a very strong set of states and a strong center. Together, they will lead the agenda, and I'm happy Prime Minister talked about federal India. He talked about regional aspirations. I'm very happy that he brought in that reference, and Mr. Arvind Kejriwal was there in the audience. I guess he heard it, and that's where we have to go forward.
He must not definitely liked it because
No, in the sense that I think the intent was very clear. Prime Minister talked about the kind of money that has been given to states in the last 9 years. which is thanks to the reformation of the Finance Commission, and that's where a new formula has been created, while states get greater due, and then GST also. Of course, there is an aspiration for more and more, which is very fair and legitimate. As I said, if a strong state is there with a strong center, and Prime Minister again talked about each and every part of the body, Bharat Mata ka har ang has to be strong. That means whether it's Manipur, it has to be peaceful, it has to be strong. So a definite mandate is obviously the motive of any electoral process, and we must welcome it.
And Brijesh, you know, the first paragraph he used the word, "Aap mere parivarjan hai." So, you know, parivarjan stands in opposition to parivarwaad. You know, it's a new opposition Prime Minister has created, parivarjan.
I think you know, from bhaiyon aur behnon it has become parivarjan.
Yes,
that's
So
right.
I won't take it as a you know antonym of this that parivarjan and parivarwad. I would say that, you know, from bhaiyon and behnon he has moved on to parivarjan, and it's like, it's, you know, Prime Minister's style of speaking. You know, when he was the Chief Minister of Gujarat, he would say ki Gujarat ke 6 crore bhaiyon behnon. Then when he became the Prime Minister, you know, he spoke about 120 crores you know people of India. So basically it's an attempt, it's something which he had been doing for a long time, and it's like maintaining that connect with the people, saying that, you know, you are not my voters, you know, you are like brother and sister, and now it has metamorphosized to you know, now you are my family. So it's basically talking about family in that sense.
Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam?
Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam.
Yes.
You know, I mean, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is a lofty ideal which is there, but I think, you know, very rarely you see one person, if you look at his journey, his political journey, you know, from Gujarat, where he started this particular line saying that, you know, when there were a lot of accusations against him that he's favoring this community and this not this community, he started with this, that mere Gujarat ke 5 crore bhai behno. So basically he was talking about Gujarat in its entirety.
Yes.
And that messaging he has taken it to 2014 until 2022, 23rd, the bhai behan and all that has metamorphosized now into parivarjan. So it's just part of family.
There is
so
no,
that connect which Prime Minister emphasized on has been reinforced in a much stronger way.
That he has injected new vocabularies. I'm using, I mean, a plural way, like constituencies, you know, into the political language.
See, Kartikeya, but there is also flair, you know, like Manmohan Singh. It's very wrong to compare two Prime Ministers, because, you know, we all are products of our surroundings, you know. It'll be criminal to compare, and the times we live in. Absolutely, sir. You know, in 1948, you know, if we start comparing or looking at 1948 or 1950 with the prism of 2024, 23, you know, it'll be criminal to do that, and it'll be, you know, it'll show an absolute lack of understanding of the time. But I think, you know, after a very long time, you know, India has found, post-Vajpayee, I would say, post-Vajpayee, for the first time, India has found a Prime Minister who has a flair for language, flair for speech, and, you know, flair for coming up with these kind of, you know, small wordings of phrases, which actually, you know, becomes a part of larger political messaging.
Okay.
It was with Atal Bihari Vajpayee, you know, when he would speak, people would listen.
Okay. You know, there's Vempati ji, I would like you to comment on this. You know, generally लोग सरकार बनाना चाहते हैं. प्रधानमंत्री जी has spoken about mandate, and I'm coming back to this word mandate, पूर्ण बहुमत की सरकार. Isn't he creating that imagination that if you give a proper mandate, पूर्ण बहुमत की सरकार, you are delivering it to yourself, because then you will get the policies you desire, because you have given the mandate. Then you will have a straightforward policy. It will be a government of no compromise, straight policies, reforms, economic activity, which will not be burdened by running the government through various factions. So he has used the word mandate and Poorn Bahumat in a very different way, and I find it very exciting, because when you have a Poorn Bahumat ki sarkar, then you expect them to deliver, and he's saying, I have delivered, I have done this, and it has happened because of you. You people, you gave me Poorn Bahumat ki sarkar, and he's asking for that. So I really, it really catches my attention, Vempati ji.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is, you know, the spirit of help me to help yourself, right? And,
Yes.
and that's what he says in the speech. कि मुझे आप लोग सबका योगदान चाहिए, आपका, you know, सहायता चाहिए. And you see the importance of the mandate is not just, you know, limited to decision making and policies. It is about securing India's future, the future of the youth. And I think this is why a significant part of his speech was, and a repeated reference within his speech, was to the demographic, the youth, the young population, those who are going to, be the makers and shapers of India at 2047, India at 100, right? And this is about their future. And so if you don't make the right choices now, and you don't make the right decisions now, you don't put the right foundation right now, that future will not be secure. That goal will not be realized. So I think the mandate goes beyond just the immediate. It is about a long-term vision, and I think for the first time today he took it beyond decades to talk about the next 1,000 years, and positioning himself in the middle of this continuum, right, of 1,000 years of the past, 1,000 years of the future into the future. But more importantly, what is it that we need to do now to make that happen? Because it will not happen on its own. It won't happen. It's not automatic. It is not guaranteed. The guarantee is the Modi guarantee that, empower me, I will deliver.
Absolutely. As I said,
I think that's a very good point.
Yeah, he's been at the center of, he's put himself at the center of the past and the future and drawn an action plan for that. On the family piece, he's aligned himself in terms of his messaging, at which he's absolutely adept. Simplifying it so much that मैं परिवार का मुखिया हूँ, आप मुझसे रिश्ता बनाइए जो राजनीति और नीति से परे है. ये एक ऐसा रिश्ता है जो विश्वास पर अटका है, जिसमें राष्ट्र का चरित्र छुपा हुआ है.
Politics of faith.
Politics of trust, faith and conviction. Correct. I think that's very important. So I think that vocabulary change which you rightly mentioned, he keeps on reimagining himself through his reimagined vocabulary, which is re-articulation or reassessment of his own faith.
अब आप बताइए, मुझे वाजपेयी जी की एक स्पीच याद है, हम खिचड़ी नहीं खीर बनाएंगे.
Absolutely.
I mean to say, why do I remember it? Because it stays with me.
Absolutely. And then, he's been here for 10 years. In that sense, the tire factor should have been longer. But he has this capability to stay alive and stay kicking. Couple of other points which I think in political economy we should take note of, Kartikeya. One is that in this parivar, आज उन्होंने पहली बार bureaucracy को जोड़ा. He thanked bureaucracy in such a big way. It's a message to the bureaucracy, because what happens on the eve of general elections and state elections, bureaucracy tends to get a little, iffy. If I can use that word.
No, absolutely. Iffy भी होती है, काम भी उनसे कराते हैं और गाली भी दे देते हैं आप उनको.
और इसके पहले इन्होंने bureaucracy को एक बार लताड़ा भी था. कहा था कि that एक gap है मेरे vision और उसके execution में. But he chooses his constituency so well, and I think the other big area, Kartikeya, to my mind, is middle class. He has for the first time brought in the Indian middle class in such a big and vocal manner in the Independence Day speech.
I'll just stop you here, Rakesh ji. I'm just going to read this for our viewers, because he has made a very important point. So what Rakesh ji was talking, this is what the Prime Minister said. 2014 में और 2019 में आपने मजबूत सरकार फॉर्म की तो मोदी में रिफॉर्म करने की हिम्मत आई. तब मेरे नौकरशाही के लाखों लोगों ने परफॉर्म करने वाली जिम्मेदारी बखूबी निभाई. अब जनता ट्रांसफॉर्म करती दिख रही है. That's what Prime Minister said. Yes, please continue.
So in that sense, the middle class is again a big pillar. And let's face it, the middle class has, so to say, got distance itself. I may not be liked for saying that, but that's the truth. Because, Modi's two-pillar governance, which has given great dividends, is at the bottom of the pyramid, what we call the welfare economics, where again, he has a very definite template, which is what we call the, empowerment model versus the entitlement model that, belonged to the UP era, which has come back into the focus because of Karnataka elections. And incidentally, we have his key minister, Ashwini Vaishnav, saying that we're not going to do any departure from our, empowerment model, even if, we have Karnataka elections.
In the end, I would also say one thing. Prime Minister was humble. And I'll take that closing comment for you, from you, Mr. Vempati. He was humble. What did he say? प्रधानमंत्री ने कहा कि पूरी दुनिया ने महंगाई को दबोच रखा है. हम सामान तो आयात करते हैं, हमारा दुर्भाग्य है कि महंगाई भी आयात करनी पड़ती है. भारत ने महंगाई को नियंत्रित करने के लिए भरसक प्रयास किए. पिछले कालखंड की तुलना में हमें सफलता मिली. हम इतने से नहीं मान सकते. महंगाई को कम से कम रखने के लिए कदम उठाने होंगे. मेरा प्रयास निरंतर जारी रहेगा. He didn't say that, मैं जीत गया महंगाई से.
Yeah, the battle against inflation is not yet won. Yeah.
Sir, he was humble also.
Absolutely, and I think, which is what I said right at the outset, that this was a very clear and direct speech. He was not ambivalent, he was not ambiguous. He was taking on the challenges head on, starting with Manipur right at the beginning of the speech, talking about the unfinished task of, battling inflation, growing the economy. So this was a very forthright speech and a very direct speech, and I think he came to the Red Fort determined that he's going to have this direct conversation with the people, and you could see that motivation in the energy with which he delivered the speech today. And I think even if you go back and look at some of the older speeches, clearly there is a difference in today's speech. The sheer level of energy and motivation and determination, and the resolve to have a direct conversation with the people. So with that, again, thank you for having me, and I think very happy Independence Day to you and to all of your viewers.
Thank you so much, Brijesh, Rakesh ji, Vempati ji. Thank you so much. But I would also like to end this program and leave you with one part of Prime Minister's speech, which is about India that he wants to see in next few years. I'm playing out that bite. That's where he wants India to be in next few years. I know he wants India to be at the top, but right now he wants that third place. Let's play out that bite.
और मैं आपको विश्वास दिलाता हूं, आने वाले 5 साल में मोदी का गारंटी है, देश पहले 3 वैश्विक इकोनॉमी में अपना जगह ले लेगा। ये पक्का जगह ले लेगा। आज जो 13.5 करोड़ गरीबी से बाहर आए हुए लोग हैं, वो एक प्रकार से मध्यम वर्ग की ताकत बन जाते हैं। जब गरीब की खरीद शक्ति बढ़ती है तो मध्यम वर्ग की व्यापार शक्ति बढ़ती है। जब गांव की खरीद शक्ति बढ़ती है तब कस्बे और शहर की आर्थिक व्यवस्था और तेज गति से दौड़ती है, और यही इंटरकनेक्टेड हमारा अर्थ चक्र होता है। हम उसको बल लेकर के आगे चलना चाहते हैं। मेरे प्यारे परिवारजनों, शहर के अंदर जो कमजोर लोग रहते हैं, बिना घर को मुसीबत रहती है, मध्यम वर्ग के परिवार अपना खुद का घर का सपना देख रहे हैं, हम उसके लिए भी आने वाले कुछ सालों के लिए एक योजना लेकर के आ रहे हैं, और जिसमें ऐसे मेरे परिवारजन जो शहरों में अपना घर शहरों में रहते हैं, किराए के मकान में रहते हैं, झुग्गी झोपड़ी में रहते हैं, चाल में रहते हैं, अनऑथराइज कॉलोनीज में रहते हैं, ऐसे मेरे परिवारजन अगर अपना मकान बनाना चाहते हैं तो बैंक से जो लोन मिलेगा उसके ब्याज के अंदर राहत देकर के लाखों रुपयों की मदद करने का हमने निर्णय किया है। मेरे मध्यम वर्ग के परिवार को जब 2 लाख से 7 लाख इनकम टैक्स की सीमा बढ़ जाती है तो सबसे बड़ा लाभ सैलरी क्लास को होता है, मेरे मध्यम वर्ग को होता है। इंटरनेट का डेटा बहुत महंगा था 2014 के पहले, आज दुनिया का सबसे सस्ता इंटरनेट का डेटा का खर्चा हो रहा है, हर परिवार के पैसे बच रहे हैं। मेरे प्यारे परिवारजनों, विश्व कोरोना के बाद अभी तक उभर नहीं पाया, युद्ध ने फिर एक नई मुसीबत पैदा की। आज दुनिया महंगाई के संकट से जूझ रही है, पूरी दुनिया की अर्थव्यवस्था को महंगाई ने दबोच के रखा है। हम भी दुनिया से जिन सामान की जरूरत होती है लाते हैं, तो हमें सामान तो इंपोर्ट करते हैं, हमारा दुर्भाग्य है कि हमें महंगाई भी इंपोर्ट करनी पड़ती है, तो पूरी दुनिया को महंगाई ने जकड़ के रखा है। लेकिन मेरे प्यारे परिवारजनों, भारत ने महंगाई को नियंत्रित रखने के लिए भरसक प्रयास किए। पिछले कालखंड की तुलना में हमें कुछ सफलता भी मिली है, लेकिन इतने से संतोष नहीं मान सकते। दुनिया से हमारी चीजें अच्छी है, इतने बात से हम सोच नहीं सकते। मुझे तो मेरे देशवासियों को महंगाई की बोझ कम से कम हो, इस दिशा में और भी कदम उठाने हैं, और हम उस कदम को उठा के रहेंगे। मेरा प्रयास निरंतर जारी रहेगा।
Pakistan is actually genociding Baloch people. So being Baloch is a crime. If you are a Baloch, it means in the eyes of Pakistan, you don't have any right to live.
The Chinese and Pakistanis are colonizing the Baloch and exploiting their resources.